Previously on the Beam Chronicles.
Dr. something with a K.
Kovorski, but we actually call him Dr. K for short.
Hey, I've heard that name around here. Dr. K. People seem all dodgy about him.
Before the Dr. K bust, I was the golden girl.
Is that why you're in evals? Did something happen on that bust? Caraway was as reluctant to talk about it as Charlie was.
Charlie, when are you gonna let me take you out for that drink I owe you?
Do you know the story about why she got sent to evals?
Yes, Dr. K bust. JT, this has to be the 30th time I've told you. Nobody talks about that day. It's like this unspoken pact.
Sydney, he's Kovorski's chosen son. Kovorski. That's her case, you know?
I hardly see the relevance. I myself had completely forgotten.
Suddenly, I did not even need my despicable father to remember my sister.
The man Jaxon knew as El Lobo was not always known as such. Mike Mathis was his real name. Actually, he used to go by Madman when he was an Equalizer, which at least made sense because he was fucking nuts.
I would do anything to ensure they were all right. A crisp, straight notion in a world so vague, confusing, and blurry. One perhaps worthy enough to be everything.
It's the Kovorski bust all over again.
All right, no. You know what? This is the last time. Tell me the story. Please.
You tell it, Murph.
All right, well, I guess here goes then.
These are the Beam Chronicles, with your host, MJ Dooney. Book 1 Initiation, Chapter 24, Jaxon Teaque.
Okay. I'm sure by now you've all heard some bits and pieces about Kovorski's case, but none of you know the whole thing. Back when it all started, when we first discovered the doc, it was about 6 years after Teaque, and we picked him up on an anonymous tip, if I remember correctly. Anyway, I don't know why, but Howie came along for the evaluation, and he let him slide by that first time. Maybe he was giving him a chance to give up the life the way Jaxon did for Fly. I don't know. I can't begin to guess. Back then, Howie was different. He was earnest and committed and thoughtful, you know. I'm sure part of him actually believed he was letting an innocent man have a shot at an innocent existence. Anyway, over the next few years, Kovorski's experiments, or children, I guess, started finding their way into the world. And we didn't know they were his, or else we would probably have sacked him right then, but these demons, most of them weren't like Sid and Phil. Most of them were just massive savages, not even human, and they'd rampage and attack the nearest city, breathing fire and flying and just scaring the shit out of everyone. We'd equalize them, yeah, but we had no idea where they were coming from, so they kept right on coming. By the time we finally did, 4 years later, by the time we figured out that these monsters were coming out of Dr. K's monster factory, I remember being relieved. Like the nightmare was over. We found the source. Hell, we even gave this guy a shot not to be an anom, and he insisted. It's his fault, his funeral. Time to bust him and bring him in, but that wasn't how it went down. He was too smart, Kovorski, to face us head on right away. He needed to buy time to build up his army, and so he bribed us to leave him be for a while. Howie fell for it, hook, line, and sinker, because Kovorski didn't just offer him money. He took Charlie's brain out and shipped us Phil, a present he'd prepared to give us for years. It was the power that Howie coveted. I should have seen it there. The power was more important than the process and the mission, preventing the next Teaque. It all took a backseat to Howie getting stronger, so he took his prizes and he let the doc slip by. He looked away. Time passed, monsters didn't stop, got worse, in fact. I was protesting Howie that enough was enough, but he didn't seem too interested in Kovorski at that point. He was busy with his new toys, making sure Charlie was up to snuff, selling energy surpluses generated by Phil all over the world. He just kept insisting that Dr. K was all right as he was, that he'd work himself out. Then one day, for no particular reason that I could even discover out of the blue, he changed his mind. Maybe it was a forecast, maybe he just came to his senses about it, but he finally decided it was time to bust the doctor. And so we did.
I can handle this one, you guys.
This one's mine. Get that one over there.
We're almost done. Keep it up.
Nice one, Charlie.
It was a brutal battle, but Charlie was magnificent. She was everywhere at once, just racking up kills, and no matter how much muscle Kovorski threw at her, she took it down. And I still remember Dr. K's face when he realized this warrior, this shadow of terror that was destroying his best laid plans, was his own doing. Without Dr. K, we never would have had Charlie, and without Charlie, we would never have beaten Dr. K. He fucked himself in his own ass. Anyway, after we swept his forces clean out of the building, he eventually stepped up to unleash his secret weapon. That'd be you, Sid. But Kovorski's a little guy. Even an old man like me caught him before he got to Sid and wrestled him to the ground, pinning him motionless and trapped. We had him. It was over. And all that was left was the matter of transporting everyone back to HQ. Everyone being the Doc, Big Purple, and then, one last person.
Murphy, we found her in the bag.
Oh, man. Is she,
I don't know. Say hi, sweetie. He's nice.
You know, when we finally had him down, we found this little girl. She was 5, maybe 4, genetically altered somehow. She, kind of looked like Sydney, I guess. Only little, and a girl. And anyway, she wasn't nothing threatening. She could talk a little bit, unlike most of the beasts we've been slaying, but not much, you know. Part of that was she was scared, I think. She said enough to surrender, and she gave herself up on the spot, submitting to arrest, politely and calmly, no struggle. We figured just take her with us, right? Contain if you can contain. She wasn't hurting anyone now. Might as well see what was up with her. No point in equalizing a cute little purple girl who seemed to be no harm. So that was the plan. Take Big Purple, Little Purple, Kovorski back to HQ. Process it all there. Then Howie came in. And I didn't even know he was there. You guys know he doesn't come on busts normally, but he strutted on into the room. He saw the kid kneeling on the ground. He saw me with Kovorski on his stomach under my knee. And then he looked at Caraway. And he told her,
Maria, put your gun on her.
Referring to the little girl, Little Purple.
Okay.
And Caraway, you know, as a good equalizer, she did what Howie said. Held the girl at gunpoint. Didn't really know why, but whatever. Prophet told her to. And Howie looked up to Kovorski, and he shouted all grandiosely and dramatically, like he was reciting a sonnet.
It was a fair effort, but the game is up, friend. You've lost. You have nothing left to stand in my way, no other options before you, so I will ask you one last time, Kovorski, and depending on how you answer, the girl lives or dies. Will you fix it or not?
Now, we all had no fucking clue what he was on about. Fix it, and fix what? But Kovorski apparently knew what Prophet meant. I guess they'd been dealing behind all our backs stuff that was and still is too big and important for us to hear about. I think they'd been doing it for a while too. So there were factors in play, a whole history there that none of us really understand to this day. But yeah, anyway, Doc said no. He refused to help Howie, even on the brink of destruction, even with his little daughter under the barrel of a gun. He refused to adhere to Howie's demands, so Howie just smirked and shrugged.
Do it. Shoot her.
Howie, I'm not.
Then Caraway,
I'm not gonna shoot her.
she said no too.
I beg your pardon.
First time ever somebody publicly denied him. Purest moment of bravery I've witnessed in my entire fucking life. She refused to do it. The exact thing Howie had asked her to. She refused. Nobody did that. Nobody dared but Maria.
This is a baby, Howie. We can't do this. This is different from the rest of them. This is a
Prophet didn't care what Maria was saying. He was so blindly enraged by her, his favorite soldier, snubbing his command. He was shaking, snarling, turned beet red. He looked at Mike Mathis.
El Lobo? I interrupted out of pure word association instinct.
Yeah.
Maria's voice cracked as she confirmed, glaring into the floor in front of her and biting her fingernail.
That's what he calls himself now, Murph. In evals, I think it was a coping mechanism or something
I know, Caraway.
Murphy was almost offended.
You think I haven't talked to Mikey since he went to evals?
I wasn't saying...
What happened next? I cut in so they wouldn't escalate to argument, distract from the story at hand. What did Howie say to Mathis?
Didn't say nothing. Couldn't bring himself to speak, still so blindly enraged, I guess. Just sort of waved a stern finger, tipped his head, gestured, but we all knew what it meant. He wanted him to kill her now. He wanted him to shoot the little girl. And Mathis, the guy you know as El Lobo, all them theatrics, that's not an act. He can call himself something different, but he's a psycho, a legit one. If anyone could shoot a child without remorse, it was him, but I guess he was galvanized by Maria or something. I guess he found just that shard of humanity rolling around in his crazy head, because Mathis turned him down too. Mike Mathis, the guy they called Madman, an Equalizer so long as there's been Equalizers, he folded his arms right across his chest and he shook his head. It was clear right there, none of us was gonna do it. None of us Equalizers, us licensed, cold-hearted killers, not even the craziest one was gonna shoot the girl. So Howie shot him.
Holy shit!
What are you doing?
It sunk a pit in my stomach. All the times I disregarded El Lobo, or no, Mathis. All the times I disregarded Mathis as a whack job, a joke. The cavalier jabs I took at his sanity, and all Maria could do was fake a laugh.
We watched him, our companion and our friend, our brother in arms. He took a bullet to the chest and fell on his back. I figured him to be dead. Hell, he probably was. Now that I know about the failsafe, I reckon Howie just brought him back later and chucked him in evals. But before I could react, before any of us could say a word or take action, Prophet spun on his heels and pointed his own gun at Maria's head. And we were all so shocked, paralyzed in disbelief, nobody could even move. Howie demanded it one last time.
Shoot the girl.
And Maria, she fucking leaned right into it, man. Never broke eye contact, just pressed her forehead against the barrel, dared him to shoot her. With Mathis on his back, shot dead already for the very same denial, she was insistent she wasn't going to kill that kid. Next thing I heard was a gunshot. My first assumption was he'd actually done it, shot Maria, but then I saw Charlie, grouped down to the floor from her perch up in the rafters, and she was holding a smoking Guillermo over the little girl's limp body.
As Murphy took the opportunity to collect his emotions, I spun around to look at her, still sitting off on that windowsill. She shook her head at me, wordlessly begging me not to judge her, as if I could ever even consider doing so at this point in our relationship. Regardless, she quietly tried to justify herself when she never needed to, not to me.
I tried to kill him first. I tried to ungroup Howie. He wouldn't. My gun wouldn't even point at him, and I panicked. I didn't know what else to do. He just shut off my brain recently, so I knew he was insane and evil, and he was going to kill Caraway.
There was nothing else for you to do.
Sydney, soberly gazing into the empty space in front of him, assured her monotonously.
You saved Maria's life. There was nothing else for you to do.
Nobody said a word for a long time after that. I focused my eyes on my shoelaces, trying to give each of my friends privacy as Charlie fought back tears, sucking on a lock and pressing her head into the windows. Sydney emptily stared into nothingness, statuesque, vacant, and lost in contemplation. Phil nervously clicked his fingernails against his teeth, the only sound in the room, obviously regretting his insistence on this tragic context. I finally understood so many things. Why Maria owed Charlie a drink, why she got demoted to evals, why nobody ever wanted to talk about that day, why Charlie was so insistent that I shouldn't or couldn't mess with Howie. She tried. It didn't work. Caraway squeezed my hand, and I glanced up from my shoes long enough to register her feeble, forced smile of encouragement. I leaned over and kissed the top of her head. I still felt like crap for ever asking to hear this tragic story.
It should have been me.
Murphy was not holding back the crippled anguish in his voice.
I should have pulled that trigger, not you, Shade.
It doesn't matter, Murphy.
Nah, it did. It does. At that point, I was already... I should have been the one who killed the kid. Old cuss like me, there wasn't anything left to lose of me. And instead, I lost you that day, Shade. All of you, the day you... I should have been the one who stepped into the grime. Watching you do it, it hurt me more than if I'd just pulled the trigger myself.
They shared this knowing smirk, a dark yet hopeful stare. Murphy's lips started to shake, then he broke eye contact, rustled his mustache, and awkwardly pressed into the story again.
After that, Howie, he just smugly nodded, put his gun away, shot Kovorski this look. Like, I win. He didn't even have to say it. We could read it like a book, you know? He threw Dr. K into his super secure cell. He sent Maria to evals and thought nothing of it for the last year, nearly. To this day, I have no idea what he was talking about. Will you fix it? But it was a moment I will never forget because it was the moment that just completely shattered the illusion for me. We weren't working to protect the world. We weren't trying to stop the next Teaque before it happened because it was too late. Prophet already is the next Teaque. And he had manipulated and coerced and built up this empire of power that set out to kill exactly the people who had the ability to destroy him. What we'd just done, busting Kovorski, it wasn't about dangerous anomalies and keeping people safe. He didn't ask Caraway to kill that girl because he was following beam protocols for a safer world. There was no guiding higher power driving Howie toward that bust. It was all about Kovorski standing up to him the whole time, refusing to fix it, whatever the hell that means. And with all of his armies, all of his monsters at full force, he couldn't do it. He couldn't stop Howard Prophet. That was the day Prophet took down the last guy standing in his way. That was the day he took over the world. It was the day we all realized there was nothing we could do to stop it either. If he would kill Maria, his favorite equalizer, Maria, just to get his way, he'd kill anyone that tried to stop him. Today just confirms it. Howie doesn't care about all his shit that he pretends to. He barely cares about his stupid forecast. That's just all to keep him in power. And if anyone else tries to break the rules, go against the mantra, he slams them for accountability. Meanwhile, he does whatever the hell he wants. Tyler lives, Little Purple dies. Call him out and he'll shove a gun down your throat or worse. Blame it on the forecast, whatever. The only one who's not accountable is Howie.
There was another lengthy silence as Murphy downed his whiskey. But then a thought that was increasingly and more frequently taking over my brain cropped up once again, and this time I finally actually articulated it. We could kill him. We could try to kill Prophet.
Can't. Assassination attempts on Prophet happen all the time, but they don't even come close. And the people who try it inevitably end up dead. Seen it a million times. Hell, that's probably why Vasquez let Foon out in the first place, to kill Howie. I think maybe that's the one thing he just forecasts no matter what. The plots to murder him. He knows. He always knows what's coming.
Hell, I've tried to ungroup him since then. I don't even know how often. 12 times it doesn't work. I don't know why, it just doesn't. He always has a contingency plan, right? You think he'd allow us to walk around him if we even had the ability to just kill him?
Okay, so even if he can't be killed, we are what gives him his power. Without Charlie and Maria and the Equalizers, he couldn't have stopped Kovorski, and without all of us, Foon and Fly would have smashed him today. We are the plan for half of the contingencies. What could he do if we just stopped? Why don't all the Equalizers just quit?
Equalizers quit all the time, Jaxon. It's a revolving door. Howie's always got more naive innocence and psychopathic revenge seekers on the line to fill in the gaps. The money's too good, the prestige, whatever. One Equalizer leaves, 2 more take his place. Nothing stops. We don't even slow it down.
And we can't quit, JT. I've tried. Hell, you kinda tried. You said it yourself. We're his best weapons. He won't just let us stop doing it, calmly accept our resignations and write us a fucking reference letter. He'll lock us up. He'll torture us until we fold. How is up to his limitless, twisted imagination, but there's really nothing he can't do. Send us to the brink of death, maybe past it. Resurrect and repeat? Shit. Maybe he'll dissect us and take out pieces of our brains and clone up new versions, a whole damn army even, of Jaxons and Charlies and Sids just like us, only better listeners. What good does it do? We have an excruciating time in limbo until Howie can replace us, and then things carry on. Like we never even left.
But at least we aren't part of it anymore, right? At least that way we aren't actively participating in this stupid, evil game.
Yeah, but what's the fucking difference? Will that little nugget of moral high ground get you to sleep at night when he's crawling around inside of your skull and brutalizing all the people you care about? Because I don't think he'd ever let us die either. Just in case he needed us down the line. That's why the failsafe is a curse in disguise. Even if he did accidentally kill us, he could just bring us back. He'll let us linger on as these tormented, anguished brains in jars, knowing everything we cared about is gone. He's still conquering, we're just powerless to stop it. He knows we won't go for that. He's gambling that none of us want to be the lonely, tortured survivor from a gang of martyrs thinking about, if he's doing this to me, what the hell's he doing to them? And to prevent that from happening, one of us will crack. One of us will say, what's one more? I'm dead inside anyway. What's one more to save my family?
I wish to also tell the story of the Kovorski bust, but from a different perspective. Mine.
Everyone shut up, giving him the floor. Though none of us were entirely sure of the relevance, Sid rarely offered any insight into his life before Beam, and never unprovoked like this.
My father created my sister on a self-issued challenge. You see, he had never made a female creation before and simply wondered if he could. So he applied to her a few of my modifications, slightly increased strength and durability, K-Pack, but all only to prove to himself it was possible. That was the extent of his motivation for her, and that was the extent of his regard for her as well. At least until he realized another possible use. I have mentioned to Caraway before that my father intended for me to be his successor. As such, he took a very strong interest in making me as human as possible, and what better way to sow the seeds of compassion within me than to thrust me into premature parenthood. This sister was to be my responsibility. I was 12 years old, yet I raised her and cared for her as if she were my own daughter. And she was a bratty little thing, always crying about something, never quite satisfied with what I gave her, but then at times she was so tender and gentle it washed away the bad. I named her Sydney, just like me, mostly because it was the only name that I knew, but I also wanted everyone else to know that she was mine. There could be no doubt of it, though. I spent every waking hour nurturing her and protecting her from my brothers. I taught her to talk. She slept in my bed.
His voice broke and he hung his head. I would never get accustomed to seeing a man as large and sweet as Sydney crying. It was enough to make everyone in the room cry as well, even Charlie off in the corner. Phil touched his brother's shoulder in comfort, and Sydney lifted his head to continue.
I loved her. 5 years I spent taking care of her, and there was nothing that I could do but to love her, and I do not exaggerate when I say I would have done anything for her. I did do anything for her. It was strange, retrospectively, that Kovorski did not see the flaw in his plan. Before little Sydney, I had my admiration for my father, and that was all. My world was one-dimensional, unidirectional. His wills were my wills. Giving me my sister morphed me into the sort of man he wanted me to become in order to uphold his legacy, but it also added a variable to his equation that he never truly accounted for. I no longer only had one concern. There was now the respect for my father and the love for my sister, and even I had not realized how resoundingly the latter outweighed the former until the day you...
He broke again, clutching his eyes shut, rubbing his forehead. Nobody even blinked.
When the day of the attack came, My father requested that I stay in the Kovorski pod. His logic was simple. Whether or not I fought in this battle, he knew it was a lost cause. But if I stayed, locked up and harmless, Beam would not destroy me. I was the insurance against our inevitable defeat. Our plans for global conquest would live on through me. Eventually, I could escape from the Beam dungeon, release my father, and we would rebuild the Empire together. The plan was sound, but I was hesitant to comply. If I did not fight, who would protect little Sydney? I made my concerns known to him, and at first he brushed them aside, but after my insistence was perfectly clear, he promised me she would be protected. My father, the man I followed and worshipped above all else, God himself, promised me that my beautiful, perfect sister would not die. He promised she would live. He promised. And I was helpless to do anything about it as I watched him break that promise. In one swift moment, the trust I had for my father and the love I had for my sister were taken from me. In an instant, with a simple word, no, he ended everything. My father ended my everything.
Sydney.
Charlie's voice cracked feebly from across the room.
I'm so sorry, Sydney.
She finally stopped looking out that window and instead looked at him with a level of sincere guilt I didn't even think she was capable of.
It is not your fault, Charlie.
Sydney seemed astonished by her apology.
It was my father who broke his word. He is to blame for my sister's death. You were only acting to protect Maria. There was nothing else for you to do. I have already expressed this sentiment. I would have done the same.
No, but I still pulled the trigger and I didn't know, Sid. I didn't realize. You have to believe me. If I knew you, I never would have.
Charlie, I know it. It is all well. I do not blame you.
No, Sydney, you really should blame me. I took everything away from you, not Kovorski. You can't just forgive me for that.
Charlie.
I left you empty with nothing. I took your family, your dad, your sister, your whole damn world, your everything.
Charlie. My Charlie. It is all right. Do you not see it? I have found a new one. I have found my new everything. I told you this story for a reason, and it was not to incite your remorse. I have spent months killing indiscriminately for the selfish purpose of making my father feel about me what I felt about him that day. I have killed many people in some false, misdirected vengeance in my sister's name, but I would kill thousands to bring her back. And now that I have found a new sister, a new family, I am offered a choice: to watch them stand up to Howard Prophet and suffer eternal torture at his hands while Beam persists and thrives unobstructed by their sacrifice, or to continue my murderous ways to save them. Quite frankly, this is not a choice. Even if you both refuse, it would do no good. You are my family, my second chance, my entire world. I will keep going, damn myself and everyone Prophet commands, just to keep that world safe. You say one of us will crack to preserve the others. I am sorry, but you already cracked me a long time ago.
Charlie hopped off the windowsill and practically sprinted across the room to Sydney. He stood up at precisely the right moment to be tackled into a hug. It was obviously a very private moment for them, but goddamn, it hurt my soul to look away from it.
Yeah, you know what? Fuck it. Me too. I'm cracked too. There's no point sitting in a jar letting you guys suffer while the bullshit continues, only with Foon as the general instead. At least if it's us, we have some discretion, whatever the fuck that's worth. At least if I'm out playing Prophet's game, equalizing anomalies just because he tells me to, at least I'm protecting someone. At least I'm keeping all of you safe.
Maybe it's just the best we can do, you know? Like, if anyone could eventually kill Prophet, it's us, so maybe for now we let him keep going because we can't stop him, gain his trust, wait for an opening to take him down. Maybe it's like the only way anyone could ever stop him, so in spite of all the murdering, it's a worthy cause just to... I couldn't even complete this shitty rationalization for what I had become. Frankly, I was sick of convincing myself that I had no other choice, but it didn't matter. Charlie and Sid were already right, accepting whatever unknown torture and unfathomable pain Howie had in store for me as an immortal martyr against everything Beam stood for would accomplish nothing, and knowing he was doing the same to them would destroy me. At least where I was, at least alive and under his fascist dictatorship and unwilling yet turning gear in his hate machine, I could defend and help and protect the people I cared about the most. Even in spite of all the others who would die in the process. It was horrible, a warped, selfish, odd new sense of morality. A year ago, I would have rejected it outright as no morality at all, but today, I latched onto it with every fiber of myself. I had nothing else left. No right and wrong, no shot at absolution. I was the crooked, wicked symbol for the death of justice. Before Beam, I could always hang my hat on the fact that I was a good person. My morality was my foundation, my everything, and between Howie and Fly, I lost it entirely. Prophet even took from me the ability to die for it, but maybe it was all right. Because at least I found my new everything.
Thank you for listening to this episode of The Beam Chronicles, a fiction podcast written and produced by me, MJ Dooney. There's one chapter left in book 1. I'm so amazed that I made it this far, and if you've enjoyed my little story, I'm so grateful to you. I do have somewhat of a plan for what's coming after the end of the first book, which I think is going to involve a little hiatus, but I'll give more details about my plans next week. As usual, a 5-star rating on Apple or Spotify would be incredible for me, as would a follow on social media, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, YouTube. If you want to contact me for any reason whatsoever, beamchronicles@gmail.com, but apparently people don't use email anymore. My wife told me this week, so private message on any social media platform works too. I check them daily, even though there's not much going on just yet. All music and sound effects were sourced from the Epidemic Sound Library. Special thanks to Sergio Duarte for creating the cover art for this podcast, and I will see you next week for the final chapter of this first season. Thank you again, sincerely, for listening.